I'm gonna be honest, I forgot just how good this movie looked. Or rather, I never really knew. All praise to Vinegar Syndrome for a tremendous job restoring a 4K version of The Keep, a 1 hour 36-minute 1983 supernatural horror movie directed by Michael Mann. And yeah, this movie looks so good. I said never really knew before because this movie wasn't available on DVD until 2020 and just got remastered into 4K this year. So, fresh off the heels of going to my favorite physical media store today, I want to talk about why you should consider getting a disc player so that you can watch movies like this in glorious quality. If you watch the channel, you know that I personally love very saturated or intense color, I love high contrast black and white, and I love deep focus. That doesn't mean I'm right, it's just what I personally like. If you want to hear me nerd out on color, go watch my video on Subway Riders where I talk about Joanna Here's work. For black and white and also color, go check out my video on Jonah Paris and Russell Meddy, who might be my all-time favorite cinematographer. And for deep focus, well, I'm planning on cutting together a couple clips of Joan Crawford in Possessed soon because seeing her mean mugging in the background as other people approach her is a key part of her character in that movie. Now, one of the reasons I started going nuts collecting Blu-rays and DVDs is that, unfortunately for me, all the things I like tend to get really awfully hit by compressing and streaming. You probably know the terms HD or 1080p and 4K. You might know that 4K is higher resolution than 1080p, and so it generally looks better to most people. But that's not the whole story, because 1080p from a Blu-ray disc is actually much better quality than 1080p on streaming. And 1080p on disc is, to me, actually better than 4K on streaming. The reason for this is something called bitrate. Put simply, bitrate is the amount of data that's being conveyed in the image every second. There's a very good couple of videos by Tom Scott in particular that go over this. With streaming, what companies are trying to do is get as good an image as possible to most people in as little a bitrate as possible. So often what the streamers do is choose to sacrifice stuff like color depth as opposed to image resolution because it's expensive for them. If you're Netflix and you spend $100 million on data costs each month, then if you double your bitrate, you're sending twice as much data, so your cost might be twice as much. And you might not want to make that trade for like an extra 10% in image quality for most people. Pretty much all video, whether streaming or disc, is compressed in some form. Raw video is massive. YouTube 1080p might come in at 4.5 megabits per second. Netflix 1080p might be 5 to 10. 4K streaming on Netflix is around 15 to 20, I believe. A 1080 Blu-ray disc is typically around 30 to 40 megabits, and a 4K disc can be upwards of 90 to 120 megabits per second. Now, I'm not shitting on streaming. There are very smart and talented people working at Netflix and other services, and they're trying to make sure as many people as possible can watch content in as good quality as they can. But the budget is just different. If you have 90 to 120 megabits per second on a 4K disc, then that's kind of like your budget. So you can just fit more color data and more quality and have to sacrifice less in order to display it on screen. In other words, there's only so much you can do with a smaller bitrate. So they do stuff like algorithmically prioritizing what they think the viewer will be looking at, or reducing the amount of color and contrast, or minimizing the clarity of the action. And so that generally adds up to old black and white movies not looking as good, saturated color not being as saturated, and background details not being as visible, which again is just kind of a shame for me personally. So yeah, please support physical media so that we can keep seeing this stuff in as much glory as possible. If you want a recommendation of something that might convince you that's recent, I would suggest La La Land actually. On streaming it looks good, but on disc, the colors pop incredibly. And yeah, try this new copy of The Keep, which is just beyond stunning. Looks so good. So thanks for watching, please like and subscribe.